Hello, this is Vinod Kalathil, and I'm going to talk about some elements of composition in this video. Composition is often what makes the difference between a great photograph and a weak one. It helps in attracting the viewer's eye and also holds their attention. In most simplistic terms, I would say it's just a mix of shapes, colors, tones, and textures that can be used to convey a mood or a message. There are obviously several elements to a good composition, and what you want to use really depends on the situation and what you're trying to achieve. And the more you take photos, you'll realize that these become second nature and you start incorporating them even without thinking. The first element that I want to talk about is color, or the lack of. The different colors can convey different moods. For example, blue can be melancholy or peace, depending on where you use blue. Red can be very dramatic and also can signify very strong emotions. Usually, warmer colors often convey a very positive feeling like happiness. I personally think of summer and being active when I see warm colors. Now, this is a photograph that I took recently, earlier this year, when I visited the Nilgiri or the Blue Mountains of Kerala in South India, which is where I grew up. I really love this because this was taken right before sunrise, and the shades of blue really emphasize a peaceful feeling, and it kind of tells a story of a valley where the villages are awaiting the sun before it becomes active. We can tell that in a couple of hours, this place is going to be looking completely different and will be bustling with activity. There are also some other elements here of composition, like there are repeating patterns with the mountains receding into the distance. Also, the dark and light tones. As you go from the bottom to the top of the photograph, the image becomes lighter and it conveys a sense of space and distance, with more fog obscuring the mountains that are further away. Now, in this photograph by Agnes Paradon, um, blue is again present. However, to me, white of the snow is the strongest element here, and the overall scene seems so pristine and untouched after a fresh coating of snow. I assume this is somewhere time in the morning, and I like how the photographer incorporated a person in black to show the contrast, and it also adds an element of scale to the image. Also, the person looks a little bit lost in this white covered world, but there's also a sense that everything is going to change here with this person and others starting to walk across, and the pristine nature of this area is going to change soon. Leading lines. Now, this is a very commonly used technique, and it's often a very easy way to point our viewers' attention to a specific area of the image. Our eyes naturally follow those lines in the image, and even when they are not completely obvious. I'm going to start with an image that I found on 500px here. Now, in this case, the leading lines are a very strong compositional element. Pretty much everything in this image really leads towards the end of the pier. You can see that uh, almost two-thirds of the image is occupied by the pier with its wooden floor and also the railings on the side, and they all lead you up to the end of the pier and kind of leaves you with the gorgeous sky beyond, which is really the hero of this photograph. I really like even how the cloud seems to be in tandem with those lines, and it all points to a break in the clouds right above the end of the pier. Now, here's an image that I took on Santa Monica Beach in Los Angeles earlier this summer. Here, the leading lines are formed by the tire tracks in the sand. They kind of meander across the beach and lead you to a group of people and the lifeguard shack that are there. There's also another set of leading lines that's not as obvious, and that's the line of trash cans that point in that same direction. Now, the trash cans also act as a barrier that dissuades the viewer from looking beyond uh, the trash cans to the area of the beach, which is not as interesting. I also used monochrome here to emphasize the shadows to show how low the sun is on the horizon, even though the sun is not in the picture. A very light sepia tone also adds a little bit of warmth and also timelessness to this beach scene. Now, oftentimes in landscape photography, it may be difficult to convey scale especially when the scenery is somewhat monotonous. By including a reference point like a person, a tree, or a house, you can put things in the right perspective. Um, Lately, I've been really enjoying having people in landscape photos because oftentimes they do emphasize the story. So here's a photograph that I took at the Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes in Death Valley earlier this spring. I went on a desert trip with Arcanum Master Bo Rogers and Sasakti and a few others. And this is the humongous uh, dune called the Star Dune, which is the biggest dune there. And it would have been very difficult to tell the size of the dune without that person coming down the ridge. To me, it also tells a story of how insignificant we can seem in the lap of Mother Nature. Another compositional aspect to the image is texture. The monochromatic image shows the textural beauty of the sand also. I found this wonderful image of an undulating field. I think the photographer did a great job here in framing the field with ridges and trees. It not only breaks up the monotonous landscape, but also provides perspective on the size. Again, in this case, the texture is a very important element with that light coming from the side, emphasizing the lines and how the land seems to undulate across the image. Another similar concept is viewpoint. In some ways, this is really contrary to the concept of scale. Um, so it's perfect to be talking about it right after we discuss scale. By choosing to take an image from a certain vantage point, you can tell a completely different story. A scene that's shot from very close to the ground could emphasize close by objects. Here's another image that I took in the Nilgiri Mountains of South India. This little tree was maybe 2 feet tall and was standing on the edge of a cliff. It really looks larger than life by getting very low down to the ground and close to it. I made it reach out to the skies, acting as a connection between the clouds and the earth, maybe trying to bring down some rain. In this case, also, the color or the lack of color really contributes a lot to the mood by making it very dramatic and also a little bit foreboding. Um, in this case, the actual day was foggy and cloudy, but the clouds were not as dark, and the sun was really shining through the fog. When it comes to photography, the story that you want to tell can be very different from what you actually saw. Here, the photographer literally uses the bird's eye view. It is interesting that even though it's the bird that's completely in focus, the photographer is inviting you to look down at the city by positioning right behind the bird and using shallow depth of focus. Is he trying to put yourself in the bird's feet? What does the bird see down there? Now, this could have been a very boring image without that bird on that precarious ledge, and it would have told a completely different story too if it was just a city in the image. The perspective here completely changes everything. Lastly, I want to talk about somewhat a different concept of silhouette. I've always loved silhouettes because they have this sense of mystery. Um, it can reveal a lot by hiding things that uh, the photographer does not want you to see. Um, let's take a look at a couple of images here. I found this incredible image on 500px. There are so many beautiful compositional elements here, like the beautiful light and the warmth. Um, what I really love about the silhouette is that it helps freeze the action. There is so much detail that you can see in that net, but yet so much is hidden. Maybe that net's made out of an ugly colored plastic, and it will detract from the scene. Um, to me, the photographer has really chosen to show absolutely the minimum that's necessary of the boy and the net, and has yet told a very beautiful story. And here's the silhouette that I took on Santa Monica Beach. Um, I really loved how the leaves of the palm trees were blowing in the wind, and having the trees in the silhouette, the focus is purely on the shapes, and it also shows the strength of the wind. I'm sure that the trees have got great texture and the leaves look beautiful, but they don't really contribute anything to the scene. Also, because of the fact that it's a silhouette, you can see those kites, even though they're really tiny, um, all those kites in the sky. Um, Another compositional element here is the duality of colors. There's still a lot of warmth in that setting sun, um, but the deep blue skies above show that the night is close at hand. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching my first ever video. And remember, rules are meant to be broken.